Story 1. When I was very young, we would go through the Sears catalog to create our Christmas lists. For 5 years, I asked for a crawl-through tunnel, but I never received one. I bought two for my cats. Story 2. Anytime I travel and find a penny press, I use it. My 7-year-old self is absolutely delighted every time. Story 3. When I was in my early 30s, my friend and I were sitting around reminiscing about when we were kids. We would save all our money to buy model rockets and never had enough for the really cool big ones. After a few minutes, we looked at each other and said, "We have money now." The next weekend, we went to the hobby store and spent $2,000 between the two of us. Then spent the next month building every rocket we couldn't have as kids. Once all the rockets were built and painted, we went to the local park that was frequently used for model rocket launches and spent the whole day launching them. We drew a huge crowd. It was really fun. The kids at the park would run after the rockets and bring them back to us. At the end of the day, we gave everything away to a bunch of the kids. It was one of the best days of my life. I'm not one to do the whole rest in peace my inbox thing. I woke up this morning and I can't read the comments as fast as they are coming in. Every single one is warm and lovely. Thank you all. I'm glad I could share this again and bring some joy to all of you. This is also one of the best days of my life. Story 4. I took dance as an adult. I mentioned this before, but when one of my older brothers was younger, he took piano lessons and quit after a very short time. My dad was upset, and after that, he seldom allowed any of us to take paid lessons for any activity. We would beg and promise to stick with it, but he insisted we could not. Because my brother quit piano at 6, we all ended up quitting whatever activity we tried. So, I joined an amateur dance team in college, saved up for dance lessons, and I have continued dancing ever since. Story 5. I buy my kids a lot of Play-Doh and other messy items that my parents wouldn't buy me because the house always had to be presentable in case guests were coming over. Story 6. Video games. During my late high school years, my parents told me I was too old for video games and needed to focus on my studies. The joke is on them. I eventually became a game developer. Story 7. During my first week of college, I realized that I could eat an entire loaf of garlic bread for dinner without getting into trouble. Later, I learned why my mom didn't allow me to eat an entire loaf of garlic bread for dinner. To sum it up, my stomach is equivalent to a wet paper bag. Story 8. Mousetrap. The old board game where you build a wacky Rube Goldberg-style machine. I only played it once when I was a kid at a friend's house. I loved it and asked for it as my birthday or Christmas present pretty much every year, but I never got it. Story 9. 2 kittens are litter mates and were going to be put down because they were sick. My mom still lectured me when she found out I was fostering them. Story 10. A guitar. It wasn't that I was forbidden from having one, we just couldn't afford it. Music was never a priority when we were just trying to survive. So, I bought my first guitar at the age of 31. Story 11. My first paycheck was received in my apartment. I bought a used copy of Fallout 3, a bag of blow pops, a box of fruit by the foot, and a half-gallon of chocolate milk. That memory means more to me than my first beer. I was never allowed to have any of those things as a kid. Story 12. Name brand products are great and I appreciate a good deal. However, 5-star notebooks are far superior to the inexpensive ones from Walmart. Story 13. Books. So many books. My mother always told me that books were a waste of time and money. Now I have many bookshelves filled with fantastic literature. My mother tends to have a self-centered perspective. She struggles with reading, which may explain why she does not value it. If she does not see a need for it, then I should not either. I often helped her understand some paperwork or mail. Financially, she is secure because of my father. She prioritizes personal grooming and cosmetic procedures over other interests. She is often vain, rude, and lacks education. Story 14. Advent calendar. My mom said she never got me one because she knew I would eat it all in one day. She was right even in my 30s. Story 15. Technically, I didn't buy him, he just appeared as a cat. However, he is now the most expensive freeloader ever, so I can say I bought him. Story 16. Air conditioning. I never had it as a child, and fans only do so much. I'm too old to endure the discomfort and unpleasantness of a bedroom that is 80 degrees or more in the summer. I prefer 65 degrees for sleeping. Story 17. Food. My mom always put us on crash diets, and we weren't overweight. She just controlled our food, and my stepmom and dad did the same. When I got pregnant, all they could say was, "You were going to gain weight. No more fat-free, carb-free, crash diets. No more overly processed food that tastes like chemicals." Story 18. Certain snacks, like Milano cookies or fresh cherries, were expensive even back then. Story 19. When I got my first job in high school, I received a box of Andes chocolate mints that are often given at restaurants. Instead of waiting for the rare occasion when my parents would take me to a restaurant and I might receive them with the check, I realized I could buy the entire box. Story 20. A ribeye steak. My mother would occasionally buy herself one as a special treat and get upset if my sister or I asked for a bite. She would say, "If I had a piece of excrement on a stick, you would want some too." As a mother of adult children, I cannot imagine ever doing this to my kids. If I buy steak, I buy enough for everyone. Story 21. Garlic. My mom had a severe allergy, so we couldn't have it in the house. I tasted garlic for the first time when I was 18. Since then, I have eaten garlic every day of my adult life. I can't believe the deliciousness I was missing. Story 22. Lego. My parents said they were boy toys, and they returned the set I received as a gift. In exchange, I got a toy ironing board and iron. How exciting. Story 23. It was not justified for a child to have 60 colored pencils. I love coloring, so I own an adult coloring book and a set of 60 colored pencils. Story 24. Food. As children, we were provided with meals, but not enough. Our servings were adequate, and there were no seconds. Not that we truly wanted any when dinner consisted of boiled potatoes, frozen peas, and either liver or sausage. As an adult, food is the one thing I will not restrict for myself. I'm not saying I overeat. I simply permit myself to enjoy the foods I like. Sure, I spend too much money at restaurants and the grocery store, but the experiences have left a lasting impact, making it non-negotiable. Story 25. Books like The Hobbit or The Hunger Games are captivating. I wasn't allowed to read these types of books as a child, and it feels liberating to walk into a library and finally explore them. Story 26. First-hand clothing refers to items that are not from a thrift store, but rather genuine, off-the-shelf, brand-name apparel. While the brand name may not be the most important aspect, it is the principle behind it that matters. Story 27. It's really nice to see what people gift themselves as adults and allow themselves that freedom. Growing up, I always struggled with buying things for myself because I felt guilty about wanting things that seemed unimportant compared to the more essential expenses like bills, education, and food. Financial situations were tough when I was a kid. I also feel happier buying gifts for others or making gifts for others. It has become slightly easier to buy myself the items I want, thanks to video games and books, but it's still a constant struggle. Enjoy it, everyone. Story 28. I bought myself the deluxe Webkinz membership as a 23-year-old. We couldn't afford it when I was a kid, and I sometimes like to escape to a simpler time. Story 29. My freedom. An apartment free of physical, mental, and emotional abuse from my father, as well as the enabling behavior and insincerity from my disconnected mother. I thrived once I left and moved across the country. Story 30. All parents should read this thread. No matter how trivial, if a child thinks it is important, there is a reason why. I am not suggesting that you should fulfill every request for sugary items or electronics, but the significance of these desires is important, especially when they lack reasoning that makes sense to them. Story 31. I own an arcade game. It's a one-up that I modified myself. My 12-year-old self would have loved to have one. I can play Final Fight and Golden Axe whenever I want. Story 32. Makeup. Clothes that weren't from a church donation or hand-me-downs from neighbors. Shoes that fit, nails, tattoos, skincare. Nutritious food. Basically, the self-care and self-expression I only dreamed about as a child. My family had the money, but my mom saved it all or spent it on herself. I was bullied a lot for being poor. We went without many things as a child. I didn't have a real coat until I was 15 when the school called my mom asking why. My kids will never have to worry or struggle through their childhoods like I did. Story 33. The question is, what do I buy my children that I could not have as a child? Unlimited music lessons, paid driving lessons, money to spend time with friends, clothes I could not have, video games they desire, musical instruments like a drum set, bass guitar, and electric piano. Story 34. This might sound funny, but a bed bigger than a single is quite an upgrade. I was in a single until I moved out and upgraded to a queen-sized bed. Story 35. A large container of Nutella. I wasn't allowed to have too much sugar as a child, so now I keep it stocked like it's a kitchen essential. Story 36. A black Barbie doll. I loved Barbies when I was little and I begged for a very specific one, but my dad told me that I should get ones that look like me. The purple-haired one was apparently fine, though. Story 37. Two of those 1980s fiber optic flower lamps. My grandma had one when I was little, and she never let me turn it on. Story 38. Lucky Charms. I bought a lot of underwear. I was allowed to have it as a child, but I always felt like I never had enough. Story 39. So much, where do I begin? A gaming console, a workout bench, a laptop, several books, and DVDs. Story 40. A collection of games from the early 2010s, around the end of the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 era, caught my attention. Although I missed many of them at the time, I recognized the titles from when they were popular. It was enjoyable to revisit these games, and they are often very affordable. I can visit my local bookstore and find old Xbox 360 games for around $5. The real treasure is discovering games that feature genuine, in-person split-screen gameplay. Story 41. I would like to say a Viennetta ice cream, but they stopped making it. So I buy the fancy gelato instead, although very rarely. Story 42. A large JBL speaker that shakes my house and the neighborhood for no reason. I only used it once. Story 43. I bought myself rain boots, a raincoat, and snow boots. We were poor growing up, so my mom couldn't justify buying something that was used so little and then grown out of so fast. Looking back, we walked to school through a field and woods in Ohio. We would put on a pair of socks, then grocery bags, and then another pair of socks on our feet before putting on our regular shoes. I thought the other kids who brought shoes to change into at school were so lucky and fancy. Now I have kids, and they never go a season without rain boots or snow boots. After too many days of wet feet from walking to the bus stop, I realized I'm allowed to have rain boots too. I had to tell myself it was okay because I am not growing anymore, so I won't grow out of them. They are black and have hearts on them. My snow boots are furry. Story 44. I shocked my brothers when they visited because my kids had so many sweets to choose from that they had little interest in them. When I was little, I received a few treats once a week because I spent my allowance on comics. Nature and nurture. Story 45. Creamy peanut butter with sugar. I was only allowed natural crunchy peanut butter as a child, but now I happily make my sandwiches with Jif Creamy. It's truly delicious. Story 46. The complete zoological encyclopedia that I always wanted as a kid. They no longer publish it, but I found a copy. It is finally mine. Story 47. About a month after I moved into my first apartment with a couple of friends from high school, I was grocery shopping and went down the snack aisle. I saw a variety pack of fruit snacks, including Gushers, Fruit Roll UPS, and Fruit by the Foot, all in one box. I thought, I wish I could get that. As I walked by, I stopped after a few steps as a clear thought came to me. I'm an adult. I am buying my own groceries with my own money. I can get whatever I want. I ate the entire variety box by myself over the course of the weekend. It was the best weekend ever. Story 48. Dolls. I am a gay man and wasn't allowed to have them as a child. I don't really play with them unless occasionally changing their outfits counts as playing, but I just like to look at them because they are pretty. It's mostly random Barbies, but also the occasional specific doll that I know I begged my parents for and was told no because boys do not play with dolls. If I ever have children, I intend to let them have whatever toys they want within reason. Because while it seems small, it affected me a little to constantly make do with action figures. This may sound silly, but my little brother was a typical boy who liked trains and toy cars. Seeing him get the toys he wanted while I had to settle for second or third options constantly may have played a part in it. I wonder if I am just being petty. Story 49. I bought the Barbie dolls I wanted as a child for my kids. Ruffles sour cream and cheddar potato chips. Shampoo and conditioner that I saw in commercials such as herbal essences and Pantene, for hair that is healthy and shiny. Story 50. A house. One time I tried to count the number of places I remembered living as a child and came up with at least 14 by the time I was 11. When I was 11, my mother was laid off from her job and used the severance package to buy a trailer, where we stayed until I moved out at 18. My parents struggled with money and couldn't keep us in the same place for more than about 6 months at a time until that trailer. I have lived in my house for 14 years now, plan to spend the rest of my life here, and my daughter will have just the one bedroom growing up, which she can return to any time. Story 51. When I was 12, I had a really active imagination and enjoyed playing with my Playmobil zoo set alone in my room. One day, my mom came in and said, "You're almost 13. Teenagers don't play with toys." She made me pack them all into a box, and just like that, my childhood was over. Now I'm 29, and I buy toys that bring me happiness. The perks of having adult money. Story 52. I had a friend who grew up very poor. As a child, her mother only bought her very cheap coloring pencils, about 5 for a nickel, which never lasted. I grew up in a wealthy household and we always had Derwent pencils in boxes of 12, 24, 36, or if we were very lucky, 72. She teased me about this for years, so for her 30th birthday, I gave her a box of 72. She was thrilled and kept those pencils in immaculate condition. Her children were never allowed to use them. As we approach our 70th birthday, she still has the pencils and only uses them on special occasions, although she sometimes lets her grandchildren use them under close supervision. She never realized, as an adult, that she could have bought them herself since they were still considered forbidden fruit. Story 53. Melancholy and the infinite sadness and down on the upside. My parents were strict, and I didn't get to own secular music. Story 54. That one game where you hit the iceberg blocks and avoid breaking the ice, causing a penguin to fall. It's not that I wasn't allowed to have it, but in school, other kids would use it and I never got a turn. I bought it for my niece and we had a lot of fun. Story 55. Martial arts lessons. I wanted to take karate as a child, but my mom wouldn't let me because she said, "That's for boys." Now, I have a black belt in Aikido and I am not a girl anymore, so take that, Mom. Story 56. Fresh fruit. We never had it as kids. It was just too expensive. I keep a fruit bowl on my counter at all times. Being able to hand my child a fresh apple or orange feels luxurious in the best way. Story 57. Shoes. I'm not a shoe addict. I currently have 4 pairs. But there was a time around 14 or 15 when I stopped getting new clothes. I didn't get new shoes or clothing for the start of the school year like everyone else, and it was embarrassing. The only things provided for me were food and shelter. I got a job at 15, and apart from gifts at Christmas, I had to buy new items myself. Over the years, when I could afford it, I bought a few pairs of shoes like Nike and Converse, cool shoes that I didn't have back then. Story 58. Vacation. The kind where we aren't sleeping on the floor of relatives or mucking stalls the next day. Story 59. As a young adult with my first income, I bought a kid's meal when my mother went away for the weekend. It was unpleasant and a waste of money. Story 60. Stuffed animals and video games were considered unnecessary purchases because we were struggling financially. Story 61. Whatever I want. When I was a child, my dad said, "I provide you with all the basics. Anything else you want, you have to save up for." Story 62. A rock tumbler. I always wanted one, but my parents wouldn't let me have it because it was loud and they thought I would get tired of it. I was at Harbor Freight and saw one on sale, so I decided to buy it. It's in my basement right now, tumbling away, and I can't hear it at all. I have so many beautiful rocks. Story 63. My first year of college, I bought brownie mix. I mixed it together but didn't bake it. I ate all the batter with a spoon over the weekend. Story 64. My parents did not like Transformers because they were too violent. I nagged them, and they finally got me the one that turns into a microscope. When my friends all rolled out to fight the Decepticons, I had to stay behind to analyze the sample. When my child said she wanted a Transformer, you can be sure I got her the most impressive Optimus Prime I could find. Story 65. Reading all the comments made me realize that I had a pretty good childhood. My mom was definitely trying her best to provide me with anything I wanted. I remember asking her to give me an older brother, but she couldn't. Story 66. I was extremely poor as a child, so I don't pay much attention to prices when I buy quality food or alcohol. However, I still dress casually. Story 67. A lot of things, but a big one I often get is watermelon. I had it so rarely as a child, like 4 times. Story 68. I haven't done it yet, but you know that massive jar of maraschino cherries you can get at Costco or Sam's Club? I really want to buy one. As kids, we only ever got one at a time. Story 69. I buy my kids yogurt drinks. We were very poor, and my parents were not supportive. I was never allowed to have them. Now, as a holistic mom and passionate cook and baker, I buy yogurt drinks for my kids. I know they aren't the healthiest option, but they bring joy to my children and heal something in me. Story 70. My parents never let me go to concerts while growing up because it was always just my friend group. Apparently, the mid-20s person driving us didn't count as an adult. I went to one concert when I was 17, mostly because my dad told my friend I couldn't go, and she asked, "Why? You act like you can't trust her. And she never does anything bad." I think he felt embarrassed being put on the spot like that. I've spent a significant amount of money on concerts and live shows as an adult because of this. Story 71. When I was a child, they had a Transformer toy named Blue Streak. I saw him in a catalog before he was released. He was a super awesome looking blue car Autobot. I obsessed over him for weeks and naturally asked for him for Christmas. That Christmas morning, I tore open the wrapping paper and saw his name on the box. Blue Streak. He's mine. But wait, he's not blue. He's completely gray, with not a speck of blue paint on him. Thinking that I had a defective toy, I searched for him in toy stores, but every single one I found was gray, just like mine. Why? This was before the internet, so there was no one to ask about this and no way to search for a properly blue streak except by walking. Eventually, I gave up and filed it away as an unsolvable mystery. Fast forward several decades later, and while shopping for toys for my son, I see a Masterpiece Edition Blue Streak. And he is actually blue. Plus, he looks a million times better than the original. I felt kind of silly buying a toy at my age, but I really needed closure. He guards my desk next to Shockwave, who doesn't have as cool a personal story, but I love him anyway. Story 72. Any book that featured witches or the occult. As a bonus, I am an atheist now, Mom. It seems she wasn't successful in keeping me on the straight and narrow path of Christianity after all. Story 73. Sweetened cereal. As kids, we were only allowed Cheerios, shredded wheat, grape nuts, and cornflakes. Now I eat Captain Crunch, Honeycomb, Frosted Flakes, or whatever I want. The protein is essentially the same since it comes from the milk. They didn't have nutrition labels on foods back then, so my parents thought sweetened cereal was unhealthy for us kids. We were robbed. Story 74. A huge jar of Tang. I wanted it so much to be like the astronauts when I was a kid, but my mom thought it was the most overpriced thing ever. I had to drink orange juice. One day as an adult, I was in a grocery store, and there it was, a big container of Tang. After 2 weeks, I never wanted Tang again. Mom was right. Story 75. One of the first things I bought as an adult was a Bible and a Quran. I was raised without religion and was encouraged to form my own beliefs, which I did. Why these 2 books in particular? because these two religions were the most prevalent in my home country at the time. Story 76. I built an amazing lightsaber at Disneyland alongside my 7-year-old son when he was deeply into Star Wars. It was awesome. When I was younger, I attended Disneyland and watched others participate in Jedi training. I didn't get to do it, and my mom talked me out of building a lightsaber, opting for the plastic ones. I understand. It was just junk plastic, and we were on a budget. I was a teenage girl who wasn't that into Star Wars at the time. But when my son asked to experience the expensive lightsaber building activity, we did it together. We chose our designs, assembled them, and added a colored crystal to make them glow a specific color. Even when parts of the experience felt cringeworthy, I would look over at my child, and he was truly enjoying the moment. It made it so much more meaningful. Story 77. I grew up in an evangelical community, and as a female, I was not allowed to wear pants, makeup, or cut my hair. As soon as I turned 18 and left home, I purchased blue jeans, got a haircut, and visited the makeup counter at the mall. Story 78. A horse. Even after I had made the decision, paid for it, and he was being transported, my mother still objected and told me to wait, her answer for everything. It didn't matter. I had waited decades to be able to afford one, and I wasn't waiting another moment. Story 79. Drinks other than water at restaurants. When my then-girlfriend, now wife, and I would go out to eat, she would get annoyed that I always had to have a fountain drink or beer with my meal. I explained that we were never allowed to drink anything other than water and hot chocolate on special occasions when my dad took us out to breakfast after church. Story 80. Half of these comments are basic necessities, or items that are not essentials but are important for development. The other half includes things like arcade games and Lego pirate ships. Story 81. I bought some toys I never got to experience as a child, such as remote-controlled cars, remote-controlled helicopters, and expensive Lego sets. I enjoyed a solid 6 months of feeling like a kid again and got it all out of my system. I still play with those items occasionally. I also bought myself therapy. Story 82. I had the opposite thing happen. When I was younger, if my mom said I could get a piece of candy at the store, I would try to convince her that a bottle of chocolate syrup was a piece of candy. I loved it and wanted to drink it. She always said, "No, you little maniac. That's bad for your teeth and terrible for your health." Then I became an adult and never drank a bottle of chocolate syrup because it's bad for your teeth and terrible for your health. She's a good mom. Story 83. Funnily enough, it was actually the opposite. As a kid, I was allowed to have Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. As an adult, my parents became very religious and I was no longer permitted to keep them. They even planned to burn them. I'm glad I moved out and can still buy them. Story 84. I never had money for the arcade as a child, so a few years ago, I built myself an arcade cabinet with every game I could ever want to play. Story 85. I don't know what it was called. I always saw this fancy ice cream ribbon cake in commercials. One day while shopping, I automatically bought it. My parents were right. I did not like it. It's still cool, though. Story 86. Milk. Not powdered milk, but regular milk. I also adopted my first cat, who saved my life during suicidal crises more times than I can count. I miss that giant Maine Coon. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.